Tonight is the City of Wheat Ridge Planning Commission for August 20th, 2020. Good evening and thank you all for joining us. My name is Dan Larson. I am the chair for tonight's meeting in Scott Ohm's absence. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I would like to welcome everyone to our virtual meeting, and I would like to explain this meeting format. Tonight we have our commissioners and staff visible on a video feed. Members of the public have been invited to comment on Wheat Ridge Speaks in advance of tonight's meeting and are also to participate live through a web link or by calling in on the phone. You can find that information on our meeting agenda at www.wheatridgespeaks.org. All members of the public who are participating live have been muted. When it is time for the public comment at the start of our meeting or as part of our public hearing, we will unmute all members of the public and I'll ask you to speak in the order based on the first letter of your last name. When we unmute the public, please keep background noise to a minimum. You may choose to mute yourself through your own device. If you do not plan to participate at all this evening, we recommend you simply view the meeting live by watching on Channel 8 or on wheatridgespeaks.org. If you do plan to participate this evening, when you speak, please first state your name clearly, spell your last name, and give your street address for the record. The time limit for public comments is 3 minutes per person. Speakers may not donate their time. When there are no more speakers, I will close the meeting for public comment and public participants will be muted again. We appreciate your patience with this virtual format. As with our in-person meetings, our hope is that we create a friendly and respectful atmosphere for public dialogue, and we appreciate your help in this process. Thank you. I would now like to call the City of Wheat Ridge Planning Commission for August 20th, 2020 to order. May I get a roll call of the members, please?
Ari Krichiver. Jahi Simbai.
Here.
Christine Disney.
Here.
Melissa Antle.
Here.
Will Kearns.
Here.
Janet Leo.
Here.
Daniel Larson.
Here.
And Scott Ohm is absent tonight.
Thank you, Tammy. We will now have our Pledge of Allegiance. You will now see an image of our flag on the screen. Please join me with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is approve the order of the agenda. Before we continue our agenda, I'd like to explain how we'll be voting on items tonight. Once we have a motion and a second, all commissioners in support of the motion will be asked to raise their hands and keep them raised and visible until the recording secretary acknowledges that she has recorded those votes. After voting, the recording secretary will read the result of the vote to confirm it is recorded correctly. We will use this protocol for any voting scenario tonight. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
Mr. Chairperson, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Let's call for a vote. Please raise your hand visibly in support of the motion.
Motion passed 7-0.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. And I understand the minutes for our last meeting have not been completed yet. So we will move on to the public forum.
We don't have any members of the public in attendance on the Zoom meeting tonight.
Okay. We maybe wait just a couple of seconds. If there is a member of the public on that would like to speak, now would be a good time to raise your hand. Hearing no comment from the public, we will conclude tonight's public forum. move now to the public hearing segment of our agenda. We will have one public hearing tonight. For the public hearing, we will be adding the appropriate staff and when applicable, the applicants to our video feed. Their screens will be shared if presentations are being made. They will remain part of the video feed until the conclusion of the respective agenda items. After the presentations, the commission will ask questions of the staff and the applicant, and then we will conduct the public comment portion of the hearing. This will be conducted in the same manner as earlier by unmuting public participants. We typically administer an oath for any participant in a public hearing, staff, applicants, and the public. In this virtual meeting format, we are administering that oath in a different way. If you comment during a public hearing tonight, by choosing to testify, you are agreeing that the testimony you give will be the truth as you know it. We will now open the public hearing for case number ZOA-20-05. An ordinance making conforming amendments to Chapter 26 of the Code of Laws concerning massage businesses. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes. This is Jerry Dahl, the city attorney. I'm the staff. I apologize for your inability to see me. What I've been able to do is call in, and so I can hear you and speak on my phone, and I actually have the screen up where I can see you, but my camera is not working. So you can't see me, but I put on a tie and I brushed my hair. I promise I did. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
You can. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the commission getting together for this meeting when you didn't have any other agenda items and taking some time out of your evening. I promise not to take too much, but it's an important topic, I know, to the city council. And we do need to get the planning commission recommendation on a very small part of a much larger ordinance that council has actually already adopted that addresses massage business regulation, primarily in Chapter 11, the licensing chapter of the Code of Laws. And if it were just in that chapter, I wouldn't be in front of you, because the Chapter 26, which gives you authority and scope and jurisdiction, requires only that proposals to amend Chapter 26, the zoning chapter, be brought to you for a recommendation, which then goes to City Council. And to be blunt, the 90+% of that massage ordinance was about Chapter 11 and other chapters, and it's gone through first and second reading to Council, and we have not obtained the Planning Commission recommendation on some Chapter 26 conforming changes. I'll tell you that at the end of my presentation and any questions you have in the hearing, I'm going to be asking you to take a somewhat more simplified motion. What's in your packet, not to overly confuse you, is a form of ordinance that approves these sections that need your review because these sections are in Chapter 26. Those sections were, most of them, already in the ordinance that the council adopted. And I've come to the conclusion, talking with council members and others, that they would prefer to merely receive your recommendation on the substance of these Chapter 26 changes. There's no requirement in the code that your recommendation have to take the form of a recommendation on an ordinance. Typically, that's true. As you know, you've seen lots of ordinances amending Chapter 26, and usually you make your recommendation in respect to an ordinance. That's what's in your packet, but in order to shorten the council process on this a little bit, council will be able to just take a recommendation from you. And I'm happy to answer questions on that sort of complicated procedural description I just gave you, probably more than you wanted to know. So let me dive into the actual substance here. For many years, Wheat Ridge, the city, has regulated or attempted to regulate the business of massage in the city, and it's a difficult arena to work in. The city has used various tools, primarily licensing tools, for massage therapists, for massage parlors, which is kind of an old term that was in state statute at one time, and our code regulated massage parlors. It relied on massage parlors, though, to identify themselves and come in for a permit. And in all the years where there was a massage parlor ordinance in the city, encouraging people, if they were going to conduct a massage parlor to get a license. No one ever came in and got a license, and I'm not entirely surprised at that. The issue of massage generally throughout the country and in the Denver metropolitan area has given rise to real concerns about various forms of public health. It is a true thing that there are unlicensed massage operations that engage in various sex acts, prostitution, and human trafficking. And that's a challenge that the entire metro area has been facing for quite some time, and with varying success. This has come to the attention and has been on the police department's radar screen, but with the prior tools we had in place, it was very difficult for the city to have a regulatory structure that really allowed it to address these operations, to make certain that legitimate operations were appropriately licensed by the city and could operate. The Massage Envies of the world are one such. There's a Massage Therapist Association that we've worked with, and there's a lot of real legitimate activity out there that we wanted to make certain had a clear licensing role or place in the city. At the same time, we wanted to make certain that that same licensing system allowed the city to locate, for lack of a better term, illicit massage operations and require them to either come into compliance, get the appropriate license, cease and desist from the various kinds of activities that are illegal, and be able to maintain their operation in the city, or failing that, giving the city tools to abate those operations. The ordinance that council has previously adopted, that is not in your packet because it's all in Chapter 11, largely accomplishes that. And if you have questions about sort of the main features of that ordinance, I'm happy to describe them. But it requires licensure. It imposes some time frames. You can't be open in the middle of the night. Obviously prohibits sex acts, prohibits the living at the business unless it's a home occupation. All of the things that the police department feels rather strongly that will be tools for them to make the separation between what we want to permit and what should be illegal. And City of Aurora has adopted this mode generally, and that has worked well for them. With that kind of prologue, but that prologue is all about Chapter 11, and of course the Planning Commission doesn't deal with Chapter 11, it deals with Chapter 26. The sections of this regulatory scheme that do fall in Chapter 26 are those where various kinds of massage operations are listed for zone district permitted, prohibited use purposes. In the past, we've used a range of terms: massage therapist, massage parlor, massage therapy center, and those terms show up in Chapter 26. Now, what we've done in the Chapter 11 major changes is eliminate those terms and used a single term, massage business. And that allows us to then really focus on the business licensing Chapter 11 enforcement set of tools that I've been describing to you. Of course, in Chapter 26, those same terms, massage therapist, parlor, therapy center, appear in the various zone district use charts. So a very long prologue, but what I'm asking you tonight is to recommend approval of what amounts to conforming changes for terminology in Chapter 26. I'm not asking you to weigh in on. You may have opinions about, and I'm happy to answer questions. But the Planning Commission, of course, doesn't write or recommend on licensing matters in Chapter 20 in Chapter 11. But I recognize that you may well have questions about the overall scheme and structure of this, and I'm happy to answer them. I'm just kind of distinguishing between what your role is and what you're welcome to ask. In any event, let's look though at the proposed amendments, and the way to do that is this form of ordinance that is in your packet. And there are something like 4 or 5, I think 4, sections of Chapter 26 that are being amended. The first is really not massage related at all, the definitions. For some reason, you'll notice the introductory phrase in the definition section says, okay, all these words, if they're not specifically defined above, well, the problem is that's the introductory paragraph, and all the definitions are below that paragraph. They're not above it. So that's one of these that's almost below the level of detection, but it's a Chapter 26 change, and we'd appreciate your recommending that get fixed. Now we get to more substantive matters, and you'll see the proposed amendment to Section 26204. This is the use chart for the commercial and industrial districts, and you'll see there that these former kinds of massage operations are all listed as permitted uses in the commercial districts, because it's a business like any other, and it's appropriate in these commercial districts. So it's listed as permitted, but it uses the outdated terminology, which isn't now being used in Chapter 11. And so you'll see all we're doing is switching out the terminology and inserting massage business. It's still permitted in the same zone district, so there's no policy, gee, should we allow it or not in a different way than we have in the past kind of decision being made here. It's terminology. We also found in the next section a reference in home occupations is the one place where we do need to require the practitioner to have a valid massage therapist license issued by the state of Colorado, and that's the terminology the state of Colorado uses for its massage therapist licenses. Different than the terminology massage business that the city will be using for the city's massage business licenses. But here we were compelled to actually have to make that cross-reference to the state statute. Now in Section 4, this is the mixed-use zone districts. Same thing. Now you won't be surprised that there's nothing being struck out, and you'll go, well, how come we're not striking out the old terminology? And that's because it's not there. What we have now in the mixed-use districts is the terminology of personal services, I believe. Lauren, is that correct? And
Yeah.
that covers a wide range of things. The community development director has made the appropriate administrative interpretation that when a massage business wants to be in a mixed-use district, it's classified as a personal service and is then permitted. And when you go to the use chart, you'll see personal services are permitted uses throughout the mixed-use zone districts. But because we want to harmonize the language in the zone districts of massage business with the same terminology now that's going to be used in Chapter 11, we're creating a new line. So it's really a subset, when you think about it, of personal services. A subset is massage business, permitted in all zone districts, no different than what the city has been allowing in the past. And those are the conforming amendments. You'll notice we're trying to change out any other terminology. We're using the old terminology for the new. The process to get to this point in the Chapter 11 changes, I will say, has been very lengthy, and the police department's been working sort of a working group with the business sales tax licensing division at the city to evolve the rather detailed requirements to obtain and keep a massage business license, to require a manager's license, there'd be a manager on site, etc., and to get into these the specific regulatory rules for the operation of a legitimate massage business that I mentioned early on. If you have any questions about that, I can give you a sort of a thumbnail sketch of a dozen or so key restrictions and tools that we think in the end will serve the city well. This ordinance, again, I'm talking about the Chapter 11 changes, has been modeled in large part upon an ordinance in the city of Aurora, which had a real problem with this, and they have made great strides and I think have a real handle on the situation there, and we're hoping that the same thing would be true here in Wheat Ridge. The city is engaged in real outreach with all massage businesses of whatever kind in the city and has made drafts of the regulations available to them, has worked with them to get their feedback, worked with a couple of the professional massage therapist organizations who were in support of this when it came to council. I appreciate your patience in listening to a staff report that's really about a few conforming changes that don't represent really any policy change. The massage businesses that are allowed in a given zone district before are still allowed in that zone district. We're just calling them by a different name. But meanwhile, you hear a lot more about kind of the social policy background that isn't in Chapter 26, but I think you legitimately would want to know about, and I think it's important for you to have that context. I apologize that it's coming to you kind of after the fact, and frankly, it was just something that we should have caught earlier, but a lot of people were involved in this, and sometimes when you have a huge crowd involved, it doesn't get picked up. Council, if you make a recommendation tonight, will take your recommendation on Monday, and I expect that the council will take a motion to reconsider the ordinance they've already adopted, ordinance I think it's 1696, and take note of the Planning Commission's recommendation. They will readopt that ordinance with the reference to these various zone district changes here, and make it immediately effective. What we didn't want was to further delay the enforcement of the licensing side of this very important ordinance that we've spent months getting to. There's a lot of notices going out to people that the ordinance is here. They're given, the businesses that actually have a business license right now are given 90 days to come in and get their manager's licenses and the other things under Chapter 11. If you don't have a license now and are kind of operating under the radar, then there's a separate enforcement process that'll get started for that. I hope in future I'll be able to be in person with you on something more substantive. But that's my story for tonight, and I'm sorry it took me 20 minutes to do what could probably be a 3-minute ask. But the reason I took the time is twofold. Number one, I get it that we're after the fact here, and we're asking you to help us play catch up. And I need you to know, secondly, that it's a very important policy matter to the city, and I hope you'll appreciate that. I'm happy to take questions now, or you can certainly ask if there's any public. And when we get into action territory, rather than the motion that's in your packet, I'll be suggesting a more streamlined one that Lauren will be able to share on the screen. But let's take questions and public testimony first.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. We will now call for questions from the members of the commission. Let's start with Commissioner Critchhiver. Are there any questions?
I actually do have sort of two questions. The first has to do with sort of introducing this new term into the code of laws, this term massage business. From what I can tell, that phrase is not defined anywhere explicitly. And I noticed that part of the proposal references section 26.123, which provides a bunch of definitions for other types of businesses. And I guess I'm wondering if you can address whether a definition of massage business seems prudent, and whether one will be provided.
That's a very good question. Let me, as I'm quickly looking at that term is fully defined over in Chapter 11. In sort of excruciating detail, including and there's a definition also of massage therapy, which again is a lot of detail: hydro massage, thermal massage, stroking, gliding, et cetera, et cetera. You raise a fair question. I guess my reaction to that is that it's not required that it be defined. We certainly could, and in a future ordinance, if we feel that there are terms in chapter 26 that could use definition, we could certainly add it in. I'll tell you that just like the community development director's administrative determination in the past and up till now, that the practice of massage in a mixed-use zone district fell within the term personal services. Just as that, to the extent there needs to be an interpretation of, well, what's a massage business for this zone district? I understand your question's a good one. I think that the community development director would be well armed to say it's the kind of activity that is licensed in Chapter 11. I'm looking at Chapter 11, and there's a very detailed description of that. I believe that what's being proposed by this proponent is a massage business and is or is not allowed in the relevant zone district. You had a second question, I think.
I did. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my second question has to do with the reference. So in the packet you gave us under Section 2 and Section 4, there's this reference to Chapter 11, Article 10, or additional restrictions. From what I can tell, Chapter 11, Article 10 is at the moment a vacant article. And maybe I'm missing something, so I apologize for that. I guess I'm just wondering for some clarification about that.
Also a very good question, and if I'd stuck the whole ordinance, I guess, in the packet, you would have seen that I thought I should spare you that. Maybe I shouldn't have. That article, you're right, was blank. It now is quite lengthy because that's where all of these regulations I've been talking about. You may not live in the facility unless it's a home occupation. No sex acts may be performed. The business may not be open between 9 p.m. and 6 o'clock a.m. Interior, exterior doors must remain unlocked, etc. And I could go on, but it's all of that material. And you've got to get a massage business license, a manager's license. You've got to have them ready for display, etc. All of that is now housed in Chapter 11, Article 10. So we use that vacant article to house all of these restrictions.
Great. That's what I suspected, but I just wanted to clarify. So thank you. I appreciate that. Those are my questions.
Yep. Very good.
Thank you, Commissioner Kirchheimer. We'll move to Commissioner Simba. Any questions?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Disney.
No questions.
Commissioner Antal.
No questions.
Commissioner Kearns.
Yeah, I don't understand why the terms massage therapist and massage therapy center, the names, are not okay when in section 26.613, article 11, subparagraph I, you refer to them as a massage therapist currently possessing a valid massage therapist license. So why, I get massage parlor, that's sort of old terminology, but massage therapist and massage therapy center don't seem, I don't understand why we're removing those uses or those titles.
Fair enough, and fair question. I appreciate your asking it. Two major ways to answer that. For the regulatory scheme in Chapter 11, Section 10, we wanted to have one term that said if whatever you're doing underneath the umbrella term massage business, you're subject to these licensing regulations, no prostitution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we wanted to have one term that encompassed all of the various kinds of activity. What we didn't want to have is have those new rather strict restrictions apply to massage therapists, and you get an operation that says, well, we're not that, we're a massage parlor, we're a massage therapy center, we're some other animal. We wanted there to be one term that was all inclusive so that the city could service its public policy and public health goals over in the licensing side. Now, having said that, you're very perceptive to point out, well, that's fine, Jerry Dahl, but if you're going to use that same term, how come you're not using it in 613 under home occupations? And that's very fair. That's an exception because we are needing to require practitioners in home occupations to have a valid license issued by the state, and the state of Colorado's licenses that it issues to individuals who are going to be practicing as a home occupation is called a massage therapist license. It's not called a massage business license, unfortunately. I wish it were. That'd make my answer easier here. But it's called a massage therapist license, and that's for an individual operating. And the only way for the city in the home occupation section of Chapter 26 to be able to make sure that those practitioners had a state license was to refer to the term in the state statute. What we didn't want to have happen is that you have a solo practitioner or a person claiming a home occupation, the performance of massage, and there's a sign out front and it's lit up and it's red and says massage, and they say, well, I'm a home occupation, and we wanted to be able to say that's fine, but you need to show us your state massage therapist license, which is the kind of license the state requires for those solo practitioners, and we didn't want there to be a route of escape, if you will, for an unlicensed, potentially illicit massage operation that could otherwise call itself and walk, talk, act like a home occupation. And sorry, that's kind of a complicated answer, but we're kind of stuck with that one term in that one place because of the need to require a state license, and the state uses that terminology.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Kearns. Commissioner Leo, any questions?
No, not at this time.
And Mr. Dahl, just kind of follow that up with is there anything, or is there any specific reason why this ordinance is being moved now as opposed to maybe last year or next year?
Very good question. I will say that the regulation of massage has been problematic in the city, as I mentioned at the beginning. The police department has, over time, been frustrated at their inability really to come to grips with the issue, because you'll get a business that shows up, the police department will come in, try to say, do you have any licenses here? People run out the back door. The next day, that business is gone, or the next day it's called by a different name. And I'm getting to the answer, I promise. But the city has struggled with, well, what's the tool that will really work here? We tried licensing massage parlors, and I myself wrote that ordinance about 15 years ago, maybe 20, I lose track. And we thought, oh, that's the solution, isn't it? No. Then, happily, City of Aurora within the last year, and that relates to your timing question, City of Aurora within the last year really sat down and worked with the industry, frankly, and worked with the massage envy types out there and came up with their system. And the Wheat Ridge PD primarily, and also our licensing division, took note of that and said, we think that could work for us with appropriate changes that match our licensing system, the staffing that we have, et cetera. So they put it together. With the advent of COVID, we were almost ready to bring an ordinance to council. The advent of COVID a bunch of things got put on hold. But as we all now know, we're pretty much just getting it done anyhow. That delayed it by a couple of months, but I think it's probably fair to say that the problem just kept getting bigger and really kind of more in your face. You can drive up and down 44th, and you can drive up and down Wadsworth, and you know what I'm saying. And faced with that and Aurora's apparent success, the police department put it further up on their priority list. It took quite a bit of work, but when it was finally ready, we thought we'd launch it, and that's the answer.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Dahl from the commissioners? Commissioner Senbai.
Mr. Dahl, I guess the simple question is, if we weren't to pass this, how does that affect Chapter 11 at all? Is it just non-conformance? Or, I mean, if we say, no, we don't like this, leave it as is, what does that do?
Thanks for asking that, because I ran that fact pattern through my head the minute I realized that it hadn't come to you. And here's what I concluded. That is that the Chapter 11 work will remain and effective. We have a charter provision, and every ordinance of the city both say that they're severable. So if any portion of an ordinance is declared invalid for any reason, the remaining portions remain valid. The Chapter 26 changes in Ordinance 1696 have not yet received until tonight. Hopefully they'll get one, a recommendation from the Planning Commission, so they're not yet valid. But all the Chapter 11 work is, and it does not require that the Chapter 26 terminology get changed to be harmonious. Here's why. What Chapter 26 really only does in terms of the sections you see, or it says where these kinds of businesses are permitted. Fine. They can still be permitted businesses in those zone districts as massage therapy centers, as massage therapists, as massage parlors. But because they're undertaking massage as defined in Chapter 11, they're still going to need to get all the licensing Chapter 11 requires. So kind of arose by whatever name, the fact that they're allowed as uses by right in those zone districts, which doesn't change, as you see from what I'm suggesting, does not change the fact that over in Chapter 11, they're going to have to go through a much more rigorous licensing program. So if you choose not to make this recommendation, then they'll still be able to perform their Chapter 11 functions. I should also tell you that the Code Section 26.123 requires a recommendation, or 122 requires a recommendation from the Planning Commission. You can also recommend against. That's still a recommendation, and satisfies the code requirement for your role. I obviously would much prefer that you think it's a good idea that we harmonize these terms. But that's the answer. Worst case scenario, they'll still go ahead and implement their licensing system. And when businesses come in and want to know if they're an allowed use in that zone district, and if the terminology hasn't changed, the planning department's going to do what it's always done, which is to say, well, tell us the nature of the business. Okay, we think that you are a massage therapy business, since that's the current terminology, and that's a permitted use. If the change gets made, someone comes in and says, I want to do this, ComDev will say, tell us the nature of your business. We offer massage. You're a massage business. Here's where those businesses are allowed. Is that responsive to your question? It's a perceptive question, too.
Yes, sir, Mr. Dahl. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to add exactly what you were just saying, Mr. Dahl, that the practical implication here is that the planning division and the tax and licensing division will be speaking the same language to our businesses. So it's just challenging, and it happens like with liquor and other types of businesses where we have one term and they have another. So it just feels like we're sort of not speaking the same language. So this just helps with our customer service and our internal communication.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, I will now open the hearing for public comment. If you wish to comment on this case, you will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. When I recognize you, please give us your name, spell your last name, and share your address. We will now unmute all participants. Keep your background noise to a minimum. If you do not plan to speak at this time, you may mute yourself through your own device. Is there anybody in the public that chooses to speak?
I don't see anybody in the participant window from the public. It's just our staff. And I'd also like to state for the record that we did not receive any comments to our staff or any comments on WeWork Speaks on this public hearing item.
Thank you. We will now close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion.
For that purpose, rather than the one that's in the packet, in order to accommodate this, and it will be Zach Urban, will make a motion to reconsider so that we can incorporate the Planning Commission recommendation and not have to wait until September for these changes to be effective. So this motion will do that.
I move, pursuant to the authority of the Commission and Code Section 26-122, I move to recommend approval of conforming amendments to Code Sections 26-123, 26-204, 26-613, and 26-1111 to identify massage businesses rather than massage therapists, massage parlors, and massage therapy centers for zone district and home occupation purposes to correct an identified error in section 26-123 and to make the chapter 26 references to massage businesses consistent with the regulation of the same in chapter 11 as amended by council's ordinance number 1696.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, we can call for a vote. Please raise your hand visibly in support of the motion.
There we go. Motion passed 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. O'Dane. We will now move on to old business. Is there any old business to discuss?
No old business. My only business, probably new business, is calendar update. We do not plan on having the first September meeting. I believe it's
Not on the 3rd of September?
Oh, Lauren,
You're muted, Lauren.
Sorry, by accident, sorry. We won't have the meeting on September 3rd, but we will have it on the 17th.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other new business? From any of the commissioners want to discuss anything? This would be the good time for it. No further discussion. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I move we adjourn the meeting.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's call for a vote to approve adjournment.
motion passed 7-0.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thank you so much for accommodating me, and I look forward to seeing you in person or at least virtually next time. I appreciate the favor you've done, and so does council. It's important to them.